All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Delayed Offside. As you can see, it's Sunjay and myself holding down the fort this week. Adam is not here once again. Sunjay, I wonder if he's trying to shoot for your record of most missed episodes in a row. He's got a bit of a ways to go, but I guess we'll see if he can do it.
I think he's holding out until McDavid draws a penalty. And then once he finally is able to, then he'll come back on.
Well, that may be a while, so he might get the record. We'll see.
Yeah.
And then Baron could not make it either. So Sunjay will be hosting this episode. But first, Sunjay, thank you. You let me take an opportunity to do something for Baron. He gave me this note, and he wanted me to read it for all of our fans to explain why he couldn't be here this week. So
perfect. Let's
go ahead and read it here.
Let's go. All right.
All right.
Are you going to talk like him too?
No, I'm terrible at impressions, so we won't be doing that. All right. Last week, Ryan and I got into a debate over how many penalties Connor McDavid drew last season. Ooh. According to Ryan, McDavid drew the second most in the league. I argued he was not even close. However, upon further review, I realized Ryan was indeed right. In my defense, numbers confuse me, especially when I am driven to rage by someone speaking ill of my beloved Oilers and my man crush, Connor McDavid. I am ashamed that I was unable to remain unbiased in this matter. So I will take a week off to regroup and refocus so that I may do better as your host of Delayed Offside. And I promise that from now on, going forward, I will leave the analytics up to Ryan, who is my superior when it comes to such matters. Thank you.
Wow. He just cuts right to the heart,
There you have it, folks. I have to say, it does take courage to admit when you were wrong. So kudos to you, Baron. I hope you take this week off to make yourself better and come back even better and stronger than ever.
Yeah.
So with that, I guess we're ready to begin, Sunjay. First, everyone, please, it would mean a lot for us if you would smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click on the notifications bell so you can be alerted to all of our new content.
Delayed Offside, let's go! So we're back, and that was a good intro. I appreciate Baron stepping up to the plate, admitting when he was wrong, and
honesty.
It's good.
Cut deep. Felt it.
Yeah, Baron, thank you so much. Even though you're not in this episode, you're still with us in spirit. Yeah. Same with you, Adam, but to a lesser degree because we miss the songs.
Yes, the songs.
Yes, so good.
It's been so long now, I can't even remember what Adam's face looks like. So
I know. Who is Adam? I don't know. I'd pass him in the street. I wouldn't even know. Just keep on walking. He'd be walking back and forth, talking about the Oilers down White Ave, and I'd be like, who is this guy? But just keep on going. But we will do our best to entertain you here today. We're missing half of us, but the
original crew.
Yeah. So, we're on to 2.0, Delayed Offside 2.0. And let's, because all the
upgrade,
Oilers,
as some may say.
Yeah. We are like the patch. There were some bugs and some deficiencies in the previous Delayed Offside.
That's right.
You downloaded it because anytime there's a software update, it always goes smoothly. And that's kind of like what this is.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah. So, now that the Oiler fans are out, we don't have to talk about them. So I'm just going to cross that off here. We're going to talk about Yamamoto's power play usage, Cassian in front of the net, Darnell Nurse injury.
No one cares.
Injury. Throw it out. Who cares? They're not even first place in their division anymore, so who cares? Ooh. So let's talk about another Canadian team that was better, and definitely not non-biased opinion in that. And let's go out east to Toronto. The Blue and White, Mitch Marner. Started off kind of slow. He had 1 point in his first 7 games. He was just feeling things out. He wasn't used to playing against American teams again, and it took him a while, but. Now he's got, let me see if this is right, 16 points in his last 13 games.
That's right.
Pretty good. So I've seen one Toronto Maple Leafs game all year, and that was against Calgary. And I have to admit, the Leafs look pretty good.
That was a good game.
Yeah, it was a good game. Calgary was coming off a back-to-back, but still no excuse. Leafs got the extra point. I know a lot of Oilers fans are upset about the Flames getting these loser points, but I kind of like it that it's rubbing them the wrong way. So I hope they
Continue to do so
on a loser point in the last game of the year. That would be pretty funny. But let's go back to Marner. Pilon, you've been watching more of the Leafs. What's the difference? Was he apprehensive? Did he get switched to a new line? What was the switch? What happened?
I think the Montreal series really affected him, and the backlash after that series. You heard a lot of the calls to trade Marner because he didn't get many points at all in that series against Montreal, and everyone was talking about the lack of goals throughout his playoff career for the last little bit. And I think it got to him. And the Leafs came out and they got a lot of opportunities, but nothing was going in. And it felt like you could just like that Montreal series, the pressure was just getting to Marner, and he just doesn't seem to be able to handle that pressure that well, and just overthinking it, holding on to the puck too long, just not being free and creative like he usually could be. It looks like that pressure is off now. It looks like he's playing loose again. He's having fun. I don't know how he was able to turn his mindset around. I know that the Leafs hired a new sports psychologist, I believe, with the team. Maybe they were able to kind of get through to him, get him in the new mindset, kind of reset, realize that he is one of the better playmakers in the league, and he just needs to go out and do what he does. So he is back. If you took out his first 7 games, he'd be on a 100-point pace right now. So that's right in line with what he usually produces. So that's great. I mean, I would have preferred to see him be able to use that pressure and that anger to I don't know, put into his game, to play with a little more like a chip on his shoulder, to play angry, because I think at points, especially in the playoffs, you need to be able to channel that negative energy into something positive. It's like Michael Jordan kept saying all the time in that Last Dance documentary that he took things personally, and he went out with a goal in mind to prove someone wrong. And he played angry. Like you could tell when, he was like, the players always said, don't piss off MJ. Right. Yeah. And so that's how I would prefer to see Mitch Marner be able to, I would prefer to see him be able to do that instead of having to play loose and have fun, which is fine. But I think at some point, especially in the playoffs, there's going to be pressure mounting again, and it'll remain to be seen if he can play under that kind of pressure.
You bring up an interesting point. You're talking about his pressure, and he isn't being able to step up, at least so far in his career, with the pressure mounting on him. I mean, there's no more pressure in the NHL than playing for the Maple Leafs. Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of talk about the Olympics coming up, and Mitch Marner's name has been talked a lot. Now, the only thing more pressure than playing for the Maple Leafs is playing for the Maple Leaf, and that's playing for the Canadian Olympic team. Would you, as a Leafs fan, be comfortable with Mitch Marner on Team Canada, knowing that so far the pressure is just too much for him right now? And would you like to see someone else maybe take that spot?
I think he'd be fine on Team Canada because he wouldn't be one of the key cogs. He wouldn't be relied upon so heavily like the Leafs rely upon him to produce offense. To be honest, Mitch Marner, I could even see him down on the maybe even the 4th line. Who knows? Dependent on line combinations. But even if he's up in the top 6, he wouldn't be driving the lines, right? Like, I mean, this is going to be Connor McDavid's team. This is going to be Sidney Crosby's team. This is going to be Nathan McKinnon's team. He's going to be way down the pecking order. So I think that is going to relieve some of that pressure to have to produce. And I think because the other players are going to be expected to do more, he's going to be able to go out there and, like he seems to like to do, relax, have fun, play loose, and play with confidence.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, that could be a big stepping stone for him in his career if he can sit and see how a player like Sidney Crosby handles that pressure. Mm-hmm. A player like Alex Pietrangelo handles that pressure, and he could kind of take that back to the Leafs come playoff time, and maybe in the first round be like, okay, we can get past the first round. We're the better team. We should be able to do this. kind of thing. And, it could be a big stepping stone. So big year for Marner.
I hope so.
Do you think if they say, they lose first round again and maybe he finishes the playoffs with 2 assists, you think that's it? Do you think the Toronto Maple Leafs will be like, all right, let's see what we can do? Maybe trade him to like a Southern team where maybe it, the pressure isn't as much, playing for the Hurricanes or.
Well, I don't think the Leafs are going to care where Marner goes in terms of how he'll produce going forward. They'll look to move him for the best assets they can get back. But if they lose in the first round, something is changing. Like, this is the last dance for this group of the Maple Leafs. If they don't get past the first round, something is changing. There's been too many times now where they should have won the first round, twice now where they were the favored team going into the first round. It's time for them to put up or shut up. Dubas has basically put his career on the line for the core four, and now they need to reward him for that faith.
It kind of reminds me of the Flames of the early 90s. After they won the Cup in 89, they wouldn't win a playoff series again until 2004. And throughout that whole time, like, a lot of times they were number 1 seed or won the division or a very high seeded team, and they were playing a team that they should have easily beat. But it was, for whatever reason, it was just that mental block. And they ended up having to get rid of everyone that was associated with that team, like Vernon, McInnes, Noondike, Roberts, Fleury, all those players. And then they, eventually won another playoff series in 2004. So, something will have to change if they don't win. So this is, you said the last kick of the can. So, you have to pay attention to those Maple Leafs teams because not a lot of people are paying attention to them.
But when you're in a losing culture, there's a difference as opposed to being in a winning culture. Like, Sunjay, I don't know, if you played high school sports or any sort of
I don't know if you call what I did playing sports. It was more drinking beer and having fun with guys.
Fair enough. Well, I'll tell you what, like, when I was in high school, I was on one of the best football teams in our province for high school football. We went undefeated my grade 12 year, won provincials. But then I was also on a basketball team where we were one of the worst teams in the league. And it's just a mental state going into games. We'd be down in those football games, and I would expect us to find a way to win. Like, you just have that faith that we are too good to lose. This is going to turn around. We're going to win. Whereas in basketball, it felt like we were going to lose before we even started the game. Like, of course, we tried our best, but there were teams we would go up against. We just knew we had no shot against. Yeah. And it's just a mindset thing. So you're right. Like, when you're stuck in a locker room where there's that monkey on your back, the entire team of losing in the first round, it's tough to get over that mindset. And so, I mean, this group is either going to push through it this year and get through that and get that monkey off the back, or it's time for wholesale changes. And like, they're not going to get rid of everyone in the core four, but I could see someone like Marner being the person to leave. Because he has such a high contract. Like, I don't want him to leave. He's a great player, but maybe they have to reevaluate how they allocate dollars throughout the lineup.
Yeah, no, they're definitely top heavy. So, if they were to make a move, he's making 10 million, 9 million?
It's like 10.5 or 10.9, I think.
That's crazy. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I guess what's his best career point total? 100, 98?
Yeah, he's been over 100-point player. It's tough because there's been 2 COVID shortened seasons. So, I mean, in those seasons, I think he was on pace for over 100 points. And then with Tavares that year, he got into the 90s. So I don't think officially he's ever gotten over 100 points, but he's had 100-point seasons when you ratio it out to an 82-game season.
Okay. So that makes sense. So, okay, interesting time. So we're going to go a little bit, I got to check my geography. So we're going to go a little bit east now because Quebec is east of Ontario. I learned that. And interesting article, the Quebec Premier, don't ask me who he is. He is meeting with Gary Bettman, and they're going to be talking about bringing the Nordiques back to the NHL. Now, first glance, this just makes too much sense. But when you look at the nuts and bolts of this, I just don't see how this is going to happen. I mean, I would love a team in Quebec. If you brought back the Nordiques, you would have 8 Canadian teams, 24 American teams. Beauty. That's symmetry, right? Like that makes sense to me. But you're not going to do expansion again, because then you'll be stuck with 33 teams. You'd have to do expansion. You'd have to do at least 2 more teams or 4.
Quebec and Houston, maybe.
Right, and that would just dilute things even more.
Yeah.
And so it's going to have to be a team that moves. And I don't think Bettman is really wanting that, and I don't think the NHL really wants that right now. What do you think, Pilon? Like, if you had to give this a percentage chance, okay, we'll say, give me a percentage chance that the Quebec Nordiques or a team in Quebec City will be playing by the year 2026. So a 5-year time frame.
Like 20%, I'd say. And that might even be high. Bettman and the Premier, like they did meet.
Mm-hmm.
The Premier, what's his name? Legault, I believe, stated that they were going to have another meeting, but then Bettman denied that they're going to have another meeting and they're happy with the status quo. So, I mean, that kind of gives you your answer right there as to what he thinks. Yeah. It's nice to know that it's an option, but I think it's going to be a last resort option for Bettman. It's going to be if, Arizona can't find, I can't remember. Did they find a new building yet?
I don't even know. I think
anyways, because this is the last season on their lease, right?
Right.
So, if they can't find a place to play, or, if one of the teams just continues to tank and they, go bankrupt or whatever, and the owner wants to sell, it would have to be financial ruin, basically, in order for Bettman to admit to being wrong about one of the Southern teams and move them to Quebec. And then on top of that, he would probably want another American team over a Canadian team, because that's just how he is. I hate it. I want more Canadian teams.
Well, the Jets came back. The Winnipeg Jets came back. Atlanta Thrashers.
They did.
We'll have to, give them a little bit of credit there.
Yeah, they did. That's true. But I could see, everyone talks about Houston or Kansas City as options. I agree, Sunjay. I don't want to see more expansion. I think 32 teams is plenty. I agree. It just starts to dilute the product. Personally, that's how I feel. So it would have to be a relocation in my eyes. Who knows? Maybe he does want to expand though, and then Quebec could potentially get a team. They have an NHL-sized arena, so they have that in place. They have the fan base in place, just like the Jets did. That they want their team to come home. They have that established rivalry with the Montreal Canadiens. That would be so fun to watch again.
Right.
I would love it. I would love for the Quebec Nordiques to come back. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I'm totally right there with you. I just don't see it. Like, their chance was the 32nd expansion team or 31st, and unfortunately, as you mentioned, they went to Vegas and Seattle. And hey, credit, Vegas is doing great. Seattle's off to a great start. I just don't know why Quebec City wasn't picked as one of them. No shade to Seattle or Vegas, but I just thought it made too much sense to come back to Quebec City, and then you'd have 8 Canadian teams, as I said. And it would just be nice symmetry, and it would work because you could then move, like, okay, if you wanted to go to the NFL model of 8 divisions of 4, you would have a Canada West and a Canada East division, and then you could play there. So it's too bad that it didn't happen at that time, because I think that was kind of like the last shot, right? Like, if you didn't do it at that time, it was going to be a long time until we do it. And who knows, like, maybe down the road, 10 years, they may expand and say, let's try something radical, and we'll do Quebec City, and we'll do cities in Europe. Maybe, like maybe Stockholm gets a team, or Helsinki, or London, England, like something crazy. I don't know, but I think it's going to be a long time. So I would give it like maybe 10% chance in 5 years, but maybe in like 20 years, I would give it a 60% chance. I think long-term they'll get a team, but it's just going to take a little bit longer now, because they kind of missed that window, and you kind of got to wait until the next expansion that they do. So
right. Yeah. The only thing I could potentially see, I'm just thinking now, is obviously they're going through rough times because of COVID.
Right.
And there's so much money they're demanding for the start of a franchise that it'd be a nice influx of money for the league and the owners that might, intrigue them perhaps to expand because of that. But I guess we'll find out.
I mean,
it doesn't sound very promising that Bettman's already denied that there's going to be a second and he's happy with the status quo, but hopefully he's just doing his poker face.
Like Quebec was like really into it during the expansion process. I remember they like paid the fees and like they had the viable building and everything. And I don't know if it was just the case of the NHL preferring Seattle, but I think, as I said, I think that was their last kind of chance for now. But 20 years down the road, I think they'll be back. But it's too bad.
I wonder if Colorado would be upset that they couldn't do those retro jerseys with the Nordiques logos and make all that money off the Nordiques name.
Right. I mean, that alone should tell you the appetite is for them, because they were like the number one selling reverse retro jersey, right? Like they were up there.
I think Washington was number one, but yeah, they were up there. They were definitely the most beautiful out of all of them. Everyone seemed to really like them.
Blasty. Come on, the horse
no, Blasty.
The horse head.
Well, you know what? It was better than the Leafs reverse retro. So
that Leafs one is like they just like gave up. They're like, "What do you want to do?" I don't know. Like they should have done it red.
That's Detroit's. Detroit's was
Detroit's was a practice jersey, but the Leafs should have been red. That would have been cool, like a red.
Red.
Yeah, because it's like reverse retro. The Canadians did blue. The Leafs should have done red.
But the Canadians have blue in their jersey. The Leafs don't have red in their jersey.
Well, I mean. Yeah, but they wore a green one time. I mean, you got to get crazy with that. I mean, everyone, Maple Leafs, red, the Maple Leaf, like, it would have just fit.
I get what you're saying. It'd be really weird to see them on a red jersey, though.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's what all the thing was about. So, I mean, Flames I guess they were the black Blasty, but, like, they were in black and red.
Leafs had done a black jersey for I guess that was an all-star game, but that looked really sharp.
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind the black with the white logo. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, geez, we're getting into jersey talk. It is like the ghost of Barron is with us. So we move from one team that could potentially come back to another team that did come back, and that is the Winnipeg Jets. Off to a pretty good start. I think they're second in their division, just behind, I believe I'm going to say St. Louis, but don't quote me. Oh, Minnesota, I think. One of the two. But they're doing pretty good. And they took 3 out of 4 points out of the Oilers. They only lost in the glorified NHL All-Star competition shootout. The shootout's kind of, why is it? I don't know. Off topic, but so the Jets, they took 3 out of 4 out of the Oilers, and Jeff Merrick, he was saying this is the best team in Canada. The Jets are the most complete team, and I just want to discuss that with you. As fans of the Leafs and the Flames who are lighting it up, both sides, are they the best team in Canada? I know we're both going to say no, so let's just not beat around the bush here. So you tell me, just being honest, like you tell me why the Leafs are the best team in Canada. I'll tell you why the Flames are the best team in Canada, and then we'll let the viewers decide.
Well, I actually don't think the Leafs are the best Canadian team in the league right now. So I'll talk about the Jets first.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, there's 4 Canadian teams in the top 10, and they are all fantastic this year. And it's hard to kind of distinguish which ones are better or worse. And I have to admit, Winnipeg has outperformed what I thought they would be or how they would do. Like I knew they upgraded that back end, their defense, which was a real sore spot last season. They were one of the worst defensive teams in the league last year. I didn't think it would be enough, but they went from one of the worst teams to probably, I would say, like an average defensive team, which is probably like, it sounds like a backhanded compliment, but it's actually a really big improvement. And all they really need is an average defense when you have one of the best goalies in the league. And then they have such a deep group of forwards that, I mean, they're a very impressive team. But no, I can't say that they're the best team. Sunjay, you're going to love me. I have to say Calgary. I have to go with Calgary. Okay, so I'm going to go with Calgary because the biggest one is they have the best defense among all those 4 Canadian teams by far. In terms of Goals against, expected goals against, they're near the top of the league, actually. Their defense is astounding this year. They also have the second best goalie among all those Canadian teams. I would argue Jack Campbell's number one, but Markstrom's very close behind at number two. It's very tight between them. And it's hard to score against Calgary. And then their offense isn't as dynamic and, I don't know, powerful, I guess, as those other three teams.
On the Flames. I want to hear more praise.
You're going to hear praise.
Okay.
They're not as good. They're not as good offensively as those other three teams, but they're still good. They're still close to the top 10, if not top 10 in the league for offense as well. I know I've seen some statistics that there's some luck involved there and that offense might drop a little bit, but I'd still argue, even in terms of expected goals for that they're getting, it's still very impressive. Top half of the league for sure. So you have the best defense, the second best goaltender, a very good offense, and their penalty or their special teams are among the league leaders as well in both power play and penalty kill. I mean, there's just really not a lot of weaknesses on this team. Whereas my Leafs, Edmonton, Winnipeg, their defense just doesn't quite match up to Winnipeg's. And that's why I would say Calgary right now, in my eyes, is the best team in Canada.
Beautiful, man. I love that. That should just be our whole show. We should just wrap up now and say, see you guys later.
Did that turn your day around, Sunjay?
Yeah. That's perfect, man. That's perfect. I liked hearing that as music to my ears. I'm not going to add too much because I agree with you, but I will say two little tidbits. One, I think they have the best coach in Daryl Sutter. He's completely turned that team around. The core has gone through many coaches and none of them have really unlocked the key to getting the best out of everyone. We all knew the talent was there, but they just weren't playing like it was. And, Daryl Sutter knows how to get the best out of each and every player. There's no coincidence that players like Iginla, Kiprusoff, Jonathan Quick, Jeff Carter, and Anze Kopitar all had their best years under Daryl Sutter. So, he knows how to get the best out of players. And two, this team has had a brutal schedule to start the year. They played 6 home games and 13 road games. They played the second least amount of home games in the entire NHL. The only team that's played less is the Islanders, who just played their first one because they got a new building on Saturday. So, they've played twice as many road games as they have home, and they're first in the Western Conference in terms of points as of this recording. So as their schedule gets a little bit easier, as they get to play at home a little bit more, enjoy some of that home cooking, the Saddle Dome ice. I think, they're only going to maintain or get better, in my opinion. So I'm right there with you. I think it's the Flames. I think they kind of snuck up on a lot of people. And I know like last year at the beginning, I said Markstrom was going to be, have a terrific year. And we would talk about him with Kiprusoff in terms of franchise great goalies. I was just a little early. I was just 1 year early, Now people, I listen to the call-in radio show after games sometimes, and people are calling in and being like, okay, how do we compare Markstrom to Kiprusoff? How does this start compared to Kiprusoff? Because he's kind of the gold standard in Calgary. So it's getting there. I mean, he's got 5 shutouts. Dan Vladar has got 2. So 7 shutouts in under 20 games. I saw the stat today. It's the most since the forward pass has been allowed in NHL.
What?
So it's just incredible. It's an incredible stat. Do I think it's going to continue? No. I think shutouts are more of a team stat. So it just shows that it's not just the goalies playing well, because you do got to play well to get a shutout, but all 3 forwards.
Yeah, they're playing great team defense.
Yeah.
Sunjay, I'm curious, because obviously you watch the Calgary Flames more than I do. Have you actually been able to notice visually what is different with the Flames? Like, what has Sutter done in terms of system or whatever that he's instituted that's resulted in such a good team defense?
They're just faster. When they used to get the puck in their own zone, and this Dallas series would drive me crazy, they would kind of like mess around with it in their own zone, pass it back and forth, slow it down, and then they would try to go. Daryl Sutter is all about pace. It's like you get the puck's in your zone, quick up, and you're already transitioning, and you're in the other team's offensive zone. And the players are just playing harder. I saw Johnny Gaudreau lay a good body check yesterday against Boston. He was battling with Chara on the Islanders in front of the net, and that's like a 1.5 foot difference in terms of height. But he was out there in front of the net with Chara. So I think he's just making the team faster. They're a little bit more in shape, in my opinion. The Flames used to be horrible in back-to-back games. If you played a back-to-back game against the Flames, you'd be like, okay, chalk that up as 2 points for the other team. Didn't matter who they were playing. They were always awful. Well, they lost to the Leafs in overtime after playing Montreal, and then they just beat the Boston Bruins on back-to-back nights. So they really are a lot more physically prepared for the games. They're playing at a quicker pace, and everyone's just going. And the way with Sutter's system is, if you're not going, you're not going to play. Doesn't matter if you're drafted first round like Juuso Valimaki, who sat for about 20 games, or not 20 games, but like 15 games. If you're not going, you're not going to play. And, that internal competition too of everyone pushing guys has really like made people, play better. And I also think the Flames had a lot of like mental mistakes. And I don't know if it was coaching or fatigue or what, but I noticed a lot of times in their own zone in years past, they were just like cough the puck up, or, pass it up the middle, or, not do a good, D-to-D pass and it would get picked off, or they would fumble it or whatever. They're not making those mental mistakes anymore. They're a lot sharper. And so I think Sutter's coaching has really fixed a lot of areas. I think he watched that team last year because last year there was no practices, right? With COVID.
Yeah.
You weren't able to practice, so I think he just watched and said, okay, we're doing this and this wrong. But you could only change so much.
Yeah, he came in mid-season, so you don't have a camp or anything, not even half a camp. So
yeah, and he brought in some guys that are more Sutter guys like Trevor Lewis, guys like Branson, Zadorov. So they're a lot bigger too. They're a lot more physical, as opposed to last year when they were, they got pushed around a little bit. But this year, very few teams are going to push around the Flames this year. So it's a complete 180 of last year, and it's good to see. And I don't think it's going to continue quite at this pace, but I think it's going to continue. I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs. I don't think they're going to be a wild card team. I think they're going to be 1-2 in the division.
Nice. Must be a lot better than last year.
I mean, last year was good in stretches, but I think it was just, I can't remember too much about last year, but I think they just like faded. Like they started off hot with Darryl, and then they faded. They had like a terrible run of luck where they couldn't score any goals, and then Montreal passed them and then never looked back. But yeah, I mean, it's too bad.
I remember at the end of the season, it was like neither of them wanted to get that last spot because Montreal went on this long losing streak. And then everyone's like, oh, like Calgary, like there's your opening. But then they lost all their games too. And it was just like no one wants to actually make the playoffs.
Yeah, right? I think they were just waiting for this year. They wanted that higher draft pick. But it kind of sucks that like they weren't like this last year when it was the all-Canadian division. Because that was like a once-in-a-lifetime thing, right? Like we'll be telling our kids like, oh, like one time there was an all-Canadian division. And they'll be like, Dad, how did the Flames do? They'll be like, well, they didn't do great that year, but the next year they did better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, last year was kind of surprising because both of us, I think we picked Calgary to finish second. I think we before the season in our preview show, we thought they would finish second in the league, and just didn't have it for whatever reason. And
this year, I think Flames are like one of those teams where like if you think they're going to lose, they're going to win, and you think they're going to win, they're going to lose. So like this year, everyone's like, they didn't really change that much. I think they got worse, and Sutter coming in as a coach, how much change will effectively have. So everyone really didn't have a lot of expectations on him. And I think that might have helped too, right? Like you mentioned Marner playing with that pressure, but the Flames really had no pressure coming into this year nationally. Like no one was talking about them. Everyone was talking about the team up north, right? They're like, oh, McDavid this, McDavid that. But I mean, hell, he's having a great year, but everyone kind of forgot about Calgary, right? And even after the first game when McDavid got that hat trick, everyone's like, yeah, Calgary's who we thought they were. And then they kind of just like, okay, we'll just do our own thing and forge our own path. And it seems to be working pretty good right now. So I can't even complain. Yeah, no, it's good. It's nice to have like both Alberta teams being so strong. It'll make for a very interesting battle of Alberta and interesting delayed offside podcast with you versus Baron and Adam whenever they show up. Yeah, I mean, well, especially if they play in the playoffs this year.
Yeah,
I mean,
that'd be nice.
well, if they play in the playoffs this year, it'll be
You might have to just hop in on those Willie ways in.
yeah. Depending if the Flames win or not, I might be in there. I'll be in the
You'll
comments
just
section.
disappear after Edmonton scores. Oh, I'm out here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, I'm not doing it. And the Flames come back to win. I'll be like, oh, I'll be with my
Adam,
cowboy
pick up
hat.
your call, Adam. I'm back.
Yeah, I'll be cowboy.
Oh, sorry, it was a bad connection or something.
Yeah. It'll be like the WWF days. We'll be cutting promos on each other.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. You should definitely do that.
I mean, it would be cool. It would be cool to see him play. I've seen him play Vancouver a couple times, and now that's not quite the same level of intensity, but it was pretty intense. Like, playing Vancouver, playing Winnipeg, playing Edmonton would just be a whole nother level, right? Like, it would be like the intensity of 04 Stanley Cup Finals, in my opinion. I think it would be like that insane.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when the fans would get into it too, like I can just imagine people in Calgary and Edmonton just getting pissed or very excited, whichever way it goes.
Yeah. Hopefully Edmonton doesn't figure out that whole playoffs thing for at least one more year. So
Yeah, exactly.
they do. Talking about Calgary Flames, we mentioned the Leafs. Let's talk about a guy who played for both franchises. One of the great riddles in NHL history, I'll say. Dion Phaneuf announced his retirement, and when he came into the league, people may not remember this, but he was insane. Like, he came into the league, and there was legitimate debates on TSN, on ESPN, on NHL.com. It's like, who would you rather have be starting off your franchise? Dion Phaneuf, Sidney Crosby, or Alexander Ovechkin? Mm-hmm. And now you look back and you're like, that's ludicrous. You would take those two. But at the time, everyone's like, this is like a number one defenseman. They don't grow on trees. Defensemen are more important to your franchise. And there was a debate, saying like, maybe you do take Phaneuf.
But he impressed so much at that World Juniors, right?
Yeah.
With, I guess he was probably drafted before then, but
yeah,
the double Dion, right? Everyone remembers the double Dion hit, and that really got people noticing him.
Yeah, man. He came in, I think he scored 20 goals as a rookie defenseman. And then I think his second or third year, he was nominated for the Norris Trophy.
He was.
Only losing to Nick Lindstrom. Okay,
and so he was a finalist for the Calder that first year, too.
Yeah, he finished number 3 ahead of Henrik Lundqvist. So, behind Crosby and Ovechkin. So that just showed what kind of promise this guy had and just how excited Flames fans were for this guy.
Were you a big Phaneuf fan, Sunjay?
I was, yeah. Like when he came in the league, he had the big shot, the big hitting. He fought. He was cocky. He was brash. He was arrogant. And as a Flames fan, I loved it. If he played for Edmonton, I would have hated his guts, right? But he was one of those guys that you have on your team and you love him. Mm-hmm. And Flames had a terrible losing streak, and Daryl Sutter was the GM, and he made probably one of the worst trades in his career as GM. Now, I praise him as a coach, and as the GM, he's had lukewarm results, but he was shipped off 3.5 years after playing in Calgary for Matt Stajan and a couple of spare parts. And he went to
like Jamal Myers, I think, was in there.
Myers, Ian White.
Yeah.
And
I actually liked Ian White. I was sad to see him go, but
he had a great mustache. He looked like a cop. He had a great mustache, and I don't think picks were involved. Maybe nothing too crazy.
It was a pretty big trade. There was a few names back and forth. I can't remember I remember people were comparing it to the Doug Gilmour trade, with just like how big of a trade it was, and the Leafs bringing in the future captain of the Leafs, and maybe this would turn things around. Like, I remember being really excited for that trade because he had such a great career at that point in Calgary, and I was a big fan of him. Like, I saw him in the World Juniors with the double Dion. I knew about his accolades, his big hit, his big shot. I was super pumped. Actually, my very, very first jersey I ever owned was a Dion Phaneuf Toronto Maple Leafs jersey.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, so that's how excited I was for him to come on board. And I remember when they first brought him in, the Leafs were doing terrible.
Yeah.
And they brought him in, and they turned things around at the end of the season. Not enough to make the playoffs, but I remember Burke talking about optimism for the next season because of Dion Phaneuf and everything he brought to the team and the winning streak that they went on at the end after they brought in Phaneuf. And I just remember being so pumped for that next season. Like, oh, like this is it. Like we brought in our savior, this is like the Doug Gilmour trade 2.0. He's going to turn things around. And here we go. We're finally going to make the playoffs after I can't remember how many years not making the playoffs at that point. And it just didn't happen, man. It's unfortunately he ended up being the captain during like the worst stretch in Leafs history, which is saying something because they've had some dark stretches in the 80s and the 70s. That was the worst stretch. It was a really long time of not making the playoffs, and he was a captain for a large section of that. And he just never seemed to find the same groove that he had in Calgary. He a lot of times looked slow. He was able to be beaten with speed around the outside. He still had that big shot, that big hit, but it always felt like he wasn't good enough to be a number one. And maybe that's not fair. Maybe it's just he didn't have the same supporting cast as he did in Calgary. Like, I mean, that team was brutal. Not put together very well at all. So maybe he just didn't have as good of a supporting cast around him. Maybe he needed a partner that could watch his back a bit and stay back for him to produce offense and help him a bit more. Who knows? But obviously he just did not perform up to expectations.
Yeah, it's too bad. He came in. I don't remember an NHL player whose career was like this, where they came in like a wrecking ball, and then they were, they flamed out so quickly. And maybe flamed out's not like the right word, because he did play quite a long time. Like he played for Ottawa, he played for the Kings, and he stuck around.
Even with the Leafs, he was their number one defenseman. He ate a lot of minutes. He was their best defenseman. It's just not saying much. So, it's not like he was a bad player. I just looked at it like he was either miscast or he didn't have the right supporting cast. He was basically set to fail, as was Phil Kessel, who had like some fantastic statistics during that run, but he was made to be like a number one guy when he shouldn't have been. He should have been supporting cast like he was in Pittsburgh. Right. So, I mean, that whole team was just set up terribly. It wasn't an ideal situation for him, unfortunately, but what can you do?
Yeah, I know when Phaneuf played here, he had Roman Hammerlick was his D partner when he started. They were a great pair. They played terrific together. So I think he was missing kind of that veteran presence in Toronto.
I'm trying to think who his partner was. Maybe it was Cody Franson. I can't remember who his partner was, but I don't think it wasn't an old reliable vet. I don't believe so.
The two things I remember Phaneuf in Toronto, his tenure. The first was when he first got there. TSN made such a big deal of how he went in the dressing room and changed the music. Do you remember that? Like, there's articles written about, he's changing the culture. Dion Phaneuf, he's not going to take anything. He changed the music. What does that signify? Does Toronto not have enough leaders that allowed the music to be changed? And I was like, oh man, just like, you wonder why with Marner with the pressure. It's like you're writing.
Oh, I know, it's so much.
Yeah.
and I think it all just came off of one quote by Berkey, who was trying to explain the leadership qualities, and like that music thing was just like one little piece about it. Like he was also talking about like him being vocal in the dressing room and like hamming it up with the guys and having an energy about him. But the music thing seemed to be something like all the media gravitate towards, right? Just like the pajamas with John Tavares, which actually wasn't pajamas, it was bed sheets, but they like to remember what they want to remember.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing I remember is I think Iggy was for Colorado at the time, but he was going to fight Phaneuf. Do you remember that? Like Phaneuf and Iggy were going to go and the ref got in the way. I remember being so disappointed because I was like, I wanted to see that fight. But then a couple of days ago at Iginla's Hall of Fame ceremony, there was Dion Phaneuf. And, Iggy and Phaneuf had quite a good chemistry together in the power play. So I don't know if it was, butting heads behind the scenes that led to Phaneuf being traded, or if it was just two highly competitive guys who are now on opposite teams that got in each other's way, and they normally solve things by punching each other in the face, and it just came to that. But I always found that kind of curious that Iginla and Phaneuf almost came to blows on the ice, and I don't know if there was any off ice issues that led to him being traded, but
That's what I was going to say. Wasn't that the rumor that he wasn't like the biggest, people weren't the biggest fan of him in the locker room. He was a bit of a trouble there.
They had a very veteran team, and maybe at the time they thought he was too young. I don't know. It's hard to say looking back now on Phaneuf and
we're not in the locker room, so we don't know. But
we don't know, right? Like,
I wasn't sure if you remember those rumors or what you.
I definitely remember there were rumors, but
because you must have been pissed about that trade, I would think.
Oh yeah, like I remember that they were on a huge losing streak, and then they beat the Oilers the day before, and then I woke up, being like, okay, maybe like they righted and it was like a Hockey Night in Canada game, and I woke up, I think it was Sunday or Saturday, and I woke up thinking, okay, like maybe they're going to change this thing around, and then the trade flashed across my computer screen, and I was like, what? Like, I can't believe this. When they first announced the trade, I was trying to think of what the return would be. And I was thinking, like, okay, maybe it's like Phil Kessel. Like, I don't know if they had Kessel at the time. I was like, it's probably like the Leafs #1 center, their top prospect, a first-round pick. I was just like listening off the top of my head. And then when the actual trade came out, I was like, that's it. Mm-hmm. And I shouldn't say that's it, because props to Matt Stajan, because he's scored the biggest goal the Flames have scored in the last 15 years, which was the series clinching goal against Vancouver. When they had that 1 year when they made the second round. So Stajan was a wonderful Flame. I loved him as a Flame. He still, I think, has roots in Calgary. He's really, embraced the city and he embraced the organization, and he's a terrific Flame. But everyone else, it was just, and not to throw shade, it wasn't their fault, but as a Flame fan, you couldn't help but be underwhelmed.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking, like, who else? Like, what were the people offering? Like, in your mind, you're like, if you traded him to, say, San Jose, if you traded him to, say, Florida or the Rangers, you couldn't have got a better return. The return just seemed so
one-sided.
Yeah, it seemed like you were trading a Corvette for a bunch of spare parts. Mm-hmm. And it turned out to be, not that. And I think Stajan, turned the tide for the Flames' favor in that trade.
You think so? I think Berkey still won that trade. Like I said, they didn't have the success, but that's not because of that trade. I think Phaneuf was still the better player over Stajan in over that period of time. Like, yeah, Stajan got to go to the playoffs, but he scored that goal. He had a long time with the Flames. I mean, great, awesome for Stajan. I liked him as a Leaf as well. Yeah. But I mean, Phaneuf was the #1 defenseman and captain for the Leafs for an extended period of time. And while it was a disappointing period of time, I mean, he still was their top defenseman and leader.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing it taught me is that Flames should never trade with Toronto. Like, it never goes well.
They've had so many.
Football, it never goes well. I don't know what it is, but like the Gilmore trade, you still bring that up, and Flames fans are pissed, because that literally gutted the franchise for a number of years. And I think it was
Cliff Fletcher. It resulted in my favorite Leaf team during my lifetime. So
the 93 Leafs?
93, from 92 to 94, that Leafs team was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they traded Doug Gilmour for a bunch of spare parts, and I can't remember how much Gilmour wanted from the Flames, but, I think part of the reason why Flames fans dislike the Leafs a lot is because of that trade, right? Like, we were the small market team at the time, and you kind of getting fleeced by the big market Leafs, right? Like, we couldn't afford to pay Gilmour, so we shipped him off, and it like gutted the franchise. And so I think there is like animosity between Flames fans towards the Leafs. Now, when the Leafs come to the Saddle Dome as well, 50%, if not more, are Leafs fans, right? Yeah. So like, I think there is like animosity of Flames fans that are like, man, those Leafs, like, they come into our building, steal our players.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So
yeah,
I don't think the Leafs, like, besides the Senators, the Leafs don't really have that with any other team. Oh, I guess, okay. Besides the Senators and the Habs, do they really have that with Calgary and Edmonton? Like, Edmonton fans kind of like, oh, the Leafs, right? Like, they're kind of like the Yankees, right? You kind of just hate them if you grow up here. They're like, oh, it's the Leafs, man. Oh,
you either love the Leafs or you hate them.
Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah, so
there's not too many people who are like, oh, they're all right, right?
Yeah,
it's either you're a diehard Leafs fan or you hate them with every fiber of your being. So
it's true, man. Like I was saying, like if the Leafs played the Oilers last year in the playoffs, I wouldn't know who to cheer for. Like legit, that would have been between a rock and a hard place. Like I guess I know less Leafs fans than Oilers fans, and they're a little bit further east. But like it would be hell, man. If they ever made the Stanley Cup Finals, it would be awful. I don't think I've ever watched. I just couldn't. It would.
You have to, because you're now part of Delayed Offside, and I'll be asking
I'd be like,
questions.
tell me what happened. Okay, hate it. Next topic. Let's talk about the draft, free agency. All right, so we're gonna end here on a couple of quick hitters here. So Pilon, I'm gonna throw these out for you, and you give me your take. Okay. First one here, Carey Price is back in practice. Looks like he's doing healthy, so hats off to Carey Price. I hope everything goes well for you, and you're able to come back this year. Give me a percentage chance that he plays this year, and give me a percentage chance that the Habs make the playoffs.
I'd say 90% chance he plays this year. I don't see him not playing at some point this year. I think it's just a matter of time of when he feels ready, both physically, because I believe he still has that knee injury he's taken care of, or he had at least at some point. And then obviously the issue of substance abuse that he went to get treated for. So once he's mentally ready and physically ready, he'll be back. Just depends when this season, but it will happen. Canadians making the playoffs. Oh gosh, I'll put that at like 15%.
Ooh, that's
maybe
higher.
maybe yeah. Like I'm like, is that even too high?
Yeah.
The only reason, like, if Carey Price comes back and he could be playoff Carey Price, that would help the Montreal Canadiens tremendously, because they are not getting good goaltending right now. Like their defensive metrics are actually not too bad, but their goaltending is brutal. However, I think it's probably too late already. Like they're so far down the standings, that's going to be really hard to make up those points in order to get back into the playoffs. But we have seen that happen with St. Louis before, so I mean anything is possible. But Carey Price can't score goals. And this Montreal Canadiens team is just not good offensively. They have 6 players tied right now for 4 goals, and that's the team lead. 4 goals, 6 players. I mean, all of them combined, Draisaitl's only 6 goals behind them, and he has 3 games in hand. So that tells you like the kind of firepower that Montreal has at their disposal right now. It's not a lot. So I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. 100%. I want Carey Price back, but I want him back healthy and ready to play. And chances Montreal makes the playoffs, I'm gonna go 1%. The East is like, it's too strong. They're in a tough division. They're not going to make top 3 in their division. So you got to look at the wild cards. And the East has a lot of teams, and a lot of teams that are, young and desperate and fighting. And I just don't see it. Okay. Next one. Give me a percentage chance. Andrew Mangiapane leads the Flames. He's got 15 goals. He's tied with Alexander Ovechkin for second in the league, behind someone I don't remember. He plays up north. I don't know. I think he's from Germany. I can't remember his name. But give me the percentage chance that Mangiapane makes Team Canada.
I'll say 35 to 40% chance, somewhere around there. I think his obviously the play right now has raised some eyebrows, but also his play during the World Championships raised some eyebrows to his talent. The only problem is there's so much Canadian talent and much more established elite talent. Like it feels like Mangiapane's just kind of hit his stride over the World Championships and then now, whereas there's a lot more players who are elite now and have been for a few years. So he's going to be tough to make it, but he has a shot.
Yeah, I'm gonna bump yours up. I'm gonna say 80%. I think he
80%.
80% because in the
so
Olympics,
he's basically a lock.
He's basically a lock for the 13th forward position.
Know, man.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna tell you why. Okay. So in the Olympics, you're allowed 13 forwards. At least you were. I don't know if you still are, but you're allowed that 13 forwards on the bench. And with Canada, you can't just have an all-star team out there. You need players that can kill penalties, which Mangiapane does. And you need players that aren't really used to playing a ton of minutes. And if you look at the time on ice, Andrew Mangiapane averages less than 15 minutes a game. So he's scoring 15 goals, averaging about 14 minutes. So he plays about 9 minutes less per game than Leon Draisaitl. And he's still like, neck and neck with him in terms of goals. You need someone to give you a spark. You can throw him out there. He won the MVP of the World Championships. I'm not saying he's going to be a top-line player, but I think he's going to make that team based on what he did and how he can kill penalties. And, if your team needs a spark and, they just had a power play and they failed to score and maybe they're down by 1, you can throw Mangiapane out there and he can, bring some energy. He can maybe throw a hit. He can score, right? So I think he's going to be on Team Canada, but he'll be that 13th, 12th forward on the 4th line. And I think he'll be on their penalty kill as well. So I think I'm pretty confident.
I don't know, man. Like when you said he only plays 14 minutes a night right there, I'm just like, okay, so he's like, what is he, 3rd line for Calgary?
Second. So he's
second
playing
line?
right now with he's playing with Blake Coleman and Michael Backlund.
Okay. Oh, well, maybe. But like, that 4th line, a lot of people want defensive-minded forwards. You said he's good defensively, but like so is Ryan O'Reilly, so is Mark Stone, so is Sean Couturier, and those are top-line guys on their teams.
Sure they are.
So, I mean, if Mangiapane's not even a top-line guy on his team, if he's not playing, 18 to 20 minutes a night, why does he get preference over a Couturier and O'Reilly or Mark Stone? I'm not saying it can't happen. I think just 80% is pretty high.
I'm pretty high on the guy. I don't know. He just came off 5 goals in the last 3 games. But, I think as well, sometimes players that are used to playing a lot of minutes maybe struggle a bit.
I remember, though, in 2002, was it? No. When was Turin? 2004. 2006. Oh, my God. I'm all over the place. Okay, yeah, 2006. So I remember at the time they were talking about, let's bring in role players. And it was an absolute disaster. And then I remember in 2010, they were saying, forget role players. Let's bring in stars and then we'll make those stars play specific roles and they'll do it. And they'll do it really well. Yeah. And they did. And then you saw that again the next year in 2014. So that there was no role players on those teams. I mean, Chris Kunitz was there, I guess. But even they brought Chris Kunitz in to play with Sidney Crosby, and I'm pretty sure they ended up separating them at some point. So even that whole bringing Zach Hyman to play with Connor McDavid, I would argue. I mean, look what happened there with Kunitz and Crosby. Like, yeah, I think you bring in your best players. You don't bring in role players. You bring in elite talent, and that elite talent will find a spot on the team. Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, 98, they brought in Rob Zamner, Trevor Linden, Shane Corson. They were all on Team Canada that year. So yeah. And it didn't work for that year either. Yeah. So and then 2002 they replaced, but in 2002 they replaced him with some young players. Like Simone Gagne, Jerome McGinley. Jerome McGinley in 2002 wasn't established, and he was having a hell of a year to start the year. And in the gold medal game, he ended up getting 2 goals and an assist. And then in 2006, they didn't bring Sidney Crosby in because they thought, he's too young. And they brought in guys like Todd Bertuzzi. We're a little bit slower. Forgot about that. That's right. Yeah, they didn't bring in Crosby. I forgot about that. Yeah, they cut pissed. Crosby. Yeah. Mario even said, bring in Crosby. Yeah. And they didn't do it. And if you think about that team in 2006, they didn't score many goals. And they could have. They had a great team. They had Sakic, Iginla, Joe Thornton, Hall of Famers on that team. But a lot of old players, right? Yeah. And slow. And it was the big international ice, and they had trouble keeping up. Yeah. Yeah. Bertuzzi was on that team. I'm trying to think who else was on. Robin Regier, I think, was on the team. Was Martin St. Louis? I think he was on that team. St. Louis, probably. Richards. It worked in 2004. They had, pretty much the same team in 2004, but then as well, 2006 they had the lockout, right? You mean, so 2002 when sorry, no, 2004 the World Cup. So I see, gotcha. Yeah. And then they had the Lightning and Flames, a ton of players from them, and Chris Draper was there, players like that. But that was North American ice.
and then
Yeah.
2006. So do you know?
And this time it's going to be, even though it's international waters, it's North American ice. So
Okay.
yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. If you could make one change to the NHL All-Star game, what would it be?
I'd have the game mean something.
Ooh, okay.
Maybe like if you're doing like East versus West or something. I know they have it like divisions right now. But you know, if an East or West team wins, then that team gets home ice advantage in the Stanley Cup final, or something like that. Some sort of incentive for them to actually give a damn.
Yeah. Right. I don't know if it was just like when I was a kid, but like the All-Star game seemed to me that it used to mean a lot more. Right. Like I don't
Maybe
know,
because
like,
you were a kid, right? And you're just
right.
enthralled by all the stars and the hoopla around it. And now that
it was cool to see Wayne Gretzky play with Joe Sakic. It was cool to see Mario Lemieux and Eric Lindros on a line, right?
Yeah.
Like nowadays, I don't know if it's just like I'm older and the players aren't like as mythical back then when I was a kid.
Probably it. Yeah.
But like I agree with them making it mean something, but
when the players are younger than you, it kind of loses that myth about it.
It is true, right? When you look up to the players, but I like the North America versus the world format. I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
The 3-3 format, it's kind of fun, but I think it's kind of played out now. I think it's kind of had its moment. Let's see McDavid line up with Patrick Kane. Let's see, it was fun when Tkachuk and the Flames and Oilers had that beef before the All-Star game. And then like Tkachuk would score and then Draisaitl and Tkachuk would just skate by each other and not even congratulate each other. Like that was great. If you could find something to like bottle that energy up and put in the All-Star game, but that was just like once in a lifetime. But okay,
run like a contest where like a couple NHL fans get to do like an armchair GM one-on-one or something, and like basically do like a snake draft and be able to select their lineups or something like that, and the winner gets a prize of like a huge prize or something.
That'd be kind of cool. Yeah, or if you had like a team of like fans, so it's not just like one. So it's like you could have like some celebrity fans with like regular fans that are like in a fantasy who's like first place in NHL fantasy or something, that like team up with like, I don't know, like some celebrities like Dave Coulier or something that are like watch hockey.
Or you could have like some sort of like analytics writer who's like focused super on like analytics, like let's say Dom Lucian or something like that, versus like an old school like eye test guy like Nick Kyprios or something like that. And you have those two pick their teams to see who would win.
That'd be awesome. Like Dom would pick like some of the like most obscure players. He would pick Mangiapane for sure, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Analytical darlings, right?
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. So you're okay. Last question of the night. You wake up and you're in Gary Bettman's shoes, and you can make one change to the NHL. What would it be?
Oh, I want to make so many changes. I would go reffing. I would say call the rule book, like establish, what's trip, what's a hook, what's a slash, what's whatever, and then you call it consistently. You don't do makeup calls. You don't do even up calls. You don't throw away the whistle if one team has way more penalties than the other. You just call it consistently throughout the game and in the playoffs. You don't change the game for the playoffs. I mean, obviously the players are going to play more aggressively, but you still be consistent as to what is a penalty throughout, and overtime as well. If a penalty is called in overtime, it's a penalty. You don't all of a sudden throw it away because you don't want to, factor into the outcome. Because at the end of the day, if a ref doesn't call a penalty, that still factors into the outcome, whether you like it or not. If you call a penalty or you don't, you're still factoring into the results. So at the end of the day, just establish some consistency and let the star player shine.
Yeah, man. That's a good one. Reffing is one topic that we didn't really talk about, but it's come up a lot. And, I agree. Like the Flames versus Islanders game the other day on Saturday night. So in the first two periods, there were 10 power plays between the two teams. Third period, the refs put their whistles away. I don't even think there was one penalty called, and there should have been. Like I remember Blake Coleman had a breakaway chance, and the Islanders defenseman got in his way and like hooked and held him. No call because it was the third period. I'm thinking like, what other league would do that. You look at the NFL, whether it's the first play or the last play, you can't pass interfere with the wide receiver when he's trying to make a catch, right? You can't be like, well, it was the fourth quarter, so we put our whistles away and let them play. It's like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you would get like, garbage football, you know what I mean? And it's like the game like devolved in the third period. And like, I'm not saying like they need to like, I don't know, like just be consistent, right? Like as a player, imagine how frustrating that would be when in the first two periods, okay, they're calling everything. So I got to be extra careful and this high pressure situation. And then the third period, they let stuff go. And then, right? Like think about Blake Coleman, he could have had a breakaway and then they're like, no. So like, of course he was frustrated, right? So
exactly. And if you have like one really skilled, fast team versus one really gritty, tough team, I mean, the gritty, tough team is probably going to take more penalties just because of the nature of the two teams and how they're built. So who cares? Let that happen. It doesn't mean they're going to lose, that they're establishing a physical dominance over the other team, or they're trying to. Maybe it'll work to the advantage. Maybe it won't. It'll make it more interesting to see if, a gritty team could actually beat out a skilled team.
Yeah. And just because your team is getting called against doesn't mean the refs have it out for you, right?
Exactly.
Like the Flames were playing the Leafs, and like I think the Leafs like out power played them like 5-1 or 6-1 that game. Doesn't mean that the ref, whoever that was that day, was like, oh, I hate the Flames today, and I'm just gonna like, no, I watched that game. Toronto was faster than Calgary. Calgary deserved those penalties, and it wasn't like, but then like Toronto got like Calgary got like a makeup call power play, right? Because it's like, it's coming. Everyone knows it's coming. When one team takes 3 penalties in a row, then it affects the way that team plays, because they're like, no matter what I do, I'm going to, our team's going to get the next call. There's no way the refs are going to call 4 penalties in a row on the other team. And the other team knows that too, right? And like the commentators bring it up, the fans bring it up. Everyone knows it, but it shouldn't be that way.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. For me, quickly, I would make more events in the NHL. Like the opening day of the NHL season should seem like this big event. Now, I know like when they came back from the lockout, every team played that day. I would do that the same. Like every opening day roster or every opening day start of the season, all 32 teams play. And it would kind of like bring excitement to all the arenas. I know it might be a scheduling nightmare.
I was going to say to get them all on TV might be tough, but
yeah, but maybe do it on a Saturday, and then you could have afternoon,
morning games afternoon
and night games, right? And it's just more events. Like the more you think about like NFL and how like families in the States on Thursday, they're going to all sit around the TV and watch football because it's a tradition, right? And in hockey, I don't think there's enough of those. Like in the States, in Canada, yes, hockey night in Canada every Saturday night. That's family tradition for a lot of homes in Canada. Totally understand, but in the States, I think they need to do more to create these like traditions. And like every January 1st, the Winter Classic, that's great. They need to do that. Go to Europe every year to start the year as well. They need to like do something like that. So maybe do like a hockey day in the US where like a lot of like American teams play, or have more rivalries between them, something to do like that. That would be mine. Just more events, because the season's long, right? Like it's 82 games, and if you're a fan of like say the Stars or the Hurricanes or even the Flames, right? Like sometimes when you play a team that you're not really like a rival with, you're like, oh, Calgary's playing the Sharks today, or Calgary's playing the Stars today. You're like, yeah, okay. But like, if it was like an event, like Calgary are playing the Stars, but it's like their annual New Year's game or something, right? Then you're like, okay, that's an event. And you would go and you go out of your way to watch it. But I feel like sometimes the NHL season is just so, there's not enough like event and like prestige to it. You kind of got to like, what's the saying? You got to sell the sizzle, not the steak. And I feel like they got to like really like have these events and really like hype it up. So, like the first game of the year, for example, they could do like the Stanley Cup winner versus the team that drafted first overall the last year. And then you could see like how the number 1 draft pick would like play against the Stanley Cup champs, or like have Connor McDavid play against Sidney Crosby.
Storylines.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like if you had the Penguins versus the Oilers first game of the year, you'd be like McDavid versus Crosby, and that would be like a storyline that people would talk about. And then, the Cup champion versus, and just other stuff, like storylines where you'd be like, okay, that's an interesting game to see.
Absolutely.
As opposed to like, I don't know, the Blackhawks versus...
Or even if there's something happening internally, between the teams naturally. I mean, not internally. If something happens naturally, something brewing, a rivalry of some sort, take advantage of that. Like I think of my Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Winnipeg Jets in the Banjo Bowl and how that whole thing started. It wasn't the league that was like, oh, we should create a Banjo Bowl, right? No, it happened because of what's that kicker's name from Winnipeg? Called us all a bunch of banjo picking rednecks. And then all of a sudden the Banjo Bowl was born. So stuff like that. I mean, you take a look at the Rangers Washington game, round 2 after the Tom Wilson incident.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that watched that game and were anticipating that game just because of a naturally built-in beef and rivalry also building because of what happened. Like it felt like the NHL was like, oh, like, not like, don't watch this, right? It should be like, like, come watch mayhem on Saturday, death and destruction. Like, take advantage of it. Like, it's entertainment. Entertain us, make us want to watch these games, find storylines, find characters for us to grab onto, find something to build a fantasy as opposed to just, another hockey game in another city.
Oh, 100%. Like, look at Kachuk and Cassian, that rematch game when they fought, and like the next day in Calgary where they like the goalies fought, like that should have been on ESPN, like that should have been on like US networks, but it wasn't, right? And like instead they got like a average game. And it's like the NHL shouldn't be afraid to promote Canadian teams, like if you're a fan in the States and you're a fan of hockey, I feel bad for you not being able to watch the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid, right? Like you would have missed like his goal against the Jets or his goal against the Rangers or Matthew Tkachuk's goal. I've got to get that one in against the Rangers, right? There's so much talent up north that I feel like sometimes the American market and the American marketing, they're just like, well, we're just going to sell where the city's based out of. But it's like, you should also sell the stars, because you have, if you talk about like the 10 best American players right now, probably 5 of them played for Canada team, right? Like 5 or 6 of them. Like there's a lot, like Brock Besser, Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew Tkachuk, Austin Matthews. So
like it should be a big deal when Connor McDavid is coming to town. Like people should know who that name is. Everyone should have it established that he is the best player of this generation and one of the best players of all time. And it should be like, LeBron James is coming to town, I have to see him, right? Or a Brady, those elite athletes that everyone wants to see, even if they're playing against your team. You still want to get a ticket to be able to say one day I saw that person play live in person. Yeah.
Like I saw Lemieux play live. I saw Gretzky play.
Did you?
Live. Oh yeah. I saw Gretzky play when he was with the Kings.
Wow.
So hockey had tickets and I got
sweet.
to see. And it was pretty cool, man. I don't remember much, but I remember like going to that game and like just anticipation of seeing Gretzky play. And Lemieux, I did see him play with the Penguins, but that was after came back in like 04.
You saw Lemieux. That's awesome.
Yeah,
like I've made sure I've seen Crosby, I've seen Ovechkin, I've seen McDavid, like I've seen Matthews, like I've seen recent stars, like ever since I really got into hockey, I've been wanting to make sure I see, the top players. So
I always went to go see Colorado when they came. So I saw like Waugh, Sakic, and like that, because that was like my team. But like you're right, like you got to sell that, right? And like I feel like the NHL kind of doesn't do that enough.
They do a terrible job selling their players, because everyone's robots, and they're trained on how to conduct interviews, and it's very boring and cliche, and they're not really allowed to show personality. And when they do, like Trevor Zegras doing like a celebration goal, throwing a stick into the crowd, then he gets a penalty. So
I saw that.
It's one of those things where it's a hockey culture, and a hockey culture, when it comes to reffing, when it comes to promoting the events, promoting players, all that stuff, there needs to be a shift in mentality around it, and realize that you are an entertainment industry. Like, yes, it's a sport, but it's entertainment for the rest of us, and you need to entertain.
Oh, 100%. And I guarantee you, American fans will watch the Canadian teams, right? They're not going to like shy away and be like, oh, Calgary versus Edmonton and there's a line brawl. I don't want to watch this because my team isn't in it. It's like, no, that was like the hottest rivalry like 2 years ago. That should have been on every American channel that was showing hockey, but it wasn't. And if these two teams play in the playoffs, just show that series on American TV, and it will sell hockey 1,000 times more than like any other two American teams you could see play. So, that was a good episode. I think we touched on a lot of topics. I think we had a lot of fun. You know,
it was a good time.
We didn't fight. You know, like sometimes Adam and Baron can be in there. You know, kind of picking at us and throwing in Oilers stuff. So it was a good time. So thanks for doing this with me, Pilon.
Had a good time. This was a blast.
Yeah, so if you like this and you want to hear more of our opinions that are 100% right, make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment, let us know what we got right or what we didn't get right, which probably be not a lot. You know, I think we were pretty spot on today. Excellent show. No errors. I checked. So and
we're very modest too. Very modest people.
We're used to success as a Flames fan. I'm used to success. So like this start is just like, like how the Patriots fans are like, oh, just wait for the playoffs. And that's kind of like how I was, it's like, number one team in the Western Conference, no big deal. We'll just wait for the playoffs. And I was very modest of singing my praises. And so if you want to hear more modest opinions and talk about the Flames, Leafs, and Oilers, and so 29 other teams in the NHL, which names escape me at this time. Join us next week. I'm sure we'll be back next week. Well, of course we'll be back next week. I mean, why wouldn't
we'll see if Baron and Adam return?
Yeah, I mean, if they don't come back, maybe we should do like a pool. Like if you can guess when they'll be back. Because Adam's still got to wear my Flames jersey.
Oh, that's exactly why he hasn't appeared for two straight.
And I should ship him my Kachuk jersey.
Yes.
So
yes.
I think we should.
And then we'll put up a picture of Kachuk so we can do a nice side by side of the two of them, comparing how closely, how similar they look in appearance. Yes.
Yeah. Right. And I think we should do a bet, like, if the Flames like do better than the Oilers or something, like he should have to wear a Flames jersey the next time, like the Flames play the Oilers and beat the Oilers. Maybe that would be a nice one. Or like if the Oilers beat the Flames, maybe I'll wear an Oilers jersey.
That'd be good, man. Add to that Battle of Alberta.
Right? Like it would kill me. It would kill me to do it, but I would do it for the fans out there. So let us know what kind of bets we should make for us. Maybe not a hair versus hair one because we all have terrific hair and we don't want to lose it. So, but we can come up with something. So join us next week. We'll be back. For Delayed Offside, I'm Sunjay.
And I'm Ryan.
See you next week.
Take care. That was fun, man.
Yeah, it was good.
Good. Yeah.